I am going a bit nuts. just a little bit. So I tried to film this video before and then I hated it. Hey girly pops, just before the video starts, I just wanted to let you know that I look off like this way a lot is because I'm looking at a script and I'm editing right now and it's really annoying me, so I just wanted to let you know. Anyways, enjoy the video. Today, I am analyzing one of my favorite feuds of all time, which is CM Punk versus MJF. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I haven't been a wrestling fan for too long. I'm relatively new to this. So what I lack in trivia knowledge, I make up for the fact that I'm a theater nerd. I mean, wrestling is basically theater, right? It's art. It's just another medium for storytelling. And I didn't spend 2 whole years in international baccalaureate English classes to not use my analysis skills for something completely stupid like professional wrestling. But let's be real. The CM Punk MJF feud is practically art. We all watched the Outside Interference fan documentary. It's fantastic. I cried like 3 times the first time I watched it, and I've watched it several times since. Everything that's been happening with CM Punk lately has got me thinking about this feud again. So I just wanted to dig deep in this feud, look at it from a literary standpoint, and maybe analyzing it will help us predict what might happen in the future. Ding! I don't know. So let's start by talking about what this feud essentially was. Who are these wrestlers to each other? MJF idolized CM Punk. CM Punk is a talented yet flawed man. CM Punk quit and left MJF bitter, but he didn't let that bitterness turn to defeat. He became spiteful of the man who has influenced him in several different facets. Now he has the chance to face the man that he hates, yet is also his hero. Now, CM Punk, he came back to wrestling a healed man, so to speak. Someone who doesn't regret what he did in the past, but has learned and grown from it. CM Punk sees himself in MJF and feels like he has to knock down his ego a few notches because he knows personally what happens when no one does. The entire feud is built on the two being the same foundationally. These are two men who have been told since day one that they are going to be great. They are two men who have ego-fueled rage. They are two men who know all too well how phenomenal they are. They make a point of this too. A big example of this is what some may call the snake story. The first instance of the snake story is when CM Punk turned heel at Ring of Honor. I'll show the clip.
You stupid old man. I'm a snake. The greatest thing the devil ever did was make you people believe he didn't exist. And you're looking at him right now. I am the devil himself, and all of you stupid, mindless people fall for it.
Sound familiar? The second instance of the snake story is when MJF kicked CM Punk in the balls and busted his head open after hugging him. We all remember. It was devastating. Here's the clip.
Wait, way too far.
You stupid old man. I'm a snake. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. And this Sunday at Revolution, I'm gonna show you and all these mindless sheep that I am the devil himself.
So clearly that was all on purpose. It's practically the same lines of dialogue. It's super interesting because if you haven't been following CM Punk since his Ring of Honor days, you wouldn't have known that was a callback. I only found out because of a gift set on Tumblr. So since seeing that, I wanted to dig deeper into the Snake story. What were the original intentions of the Snake story? What were MJF's intentions behind using CM Punk's own words against him? The Sportster actually wrote an article on this particular moment. I'll put a link, but basically I'm just going to summarize the article and bring my own thoughts. Leading up to Punk's heel turn, Punk had become basically the star of Ring of Honor, coming off of his trilogy with Samoa Joe. But in May 2005, he had a tryout with WWE and was offered a contract. So his time at Ring of Honor was coming to an end. And so for his last match with, with Austin Aries for the title, he won the title and turned heel. Here is the full story he tells.
Be afforded the time to tell all of you here today a little bit of a story. It's a parable of sorts. There was once an old man walking home from work. He was walking in the snow, and he stumbled upon a snake frozen in the ice. Well, he took that snake, and he brought it home, and he took care of it. And he thawed it out, and he nursed it back to health. And as soon as that snake was well enough, it bit that old man. And as that old man lay there dying, he asked the snake, "Why? I took care of you. I loved you. I saved your life." And that snake looked that man right in the eye and said, "You stupid old man, I'm a snake. The greatest thing the devil ever did was make you people believe he didn't exist. And you're looking at him right now. I am the devil himself, and all of you stupid, mindless people fall for it. You all believed in the same make-believe superhero that the legendary Ricky the Dragon Steamboat saw some year ago today. No, you see, you didn't know anything. You followed me, hook, line, and sinker. All you did, and I'm not mad at you. I just feel sorry for you. This belongs to me. Everything you see here belongs to me. And I did what I had to do to get my hands on this. And now, I am the greatest pro wrestler walking the earth today."
So what MJF does with this speech is even more fascinating. The Dynamite before this one that I'm referring to, MJF poured his heart out and told his story of how CM Punk changed his life for better and for worse. For once, we see this shocking vulnerability from MJF. Then the next week, we see this sort of reconciliation between the two. This moment of understanding from CM Punk to MJF. But of course, MJF betrays CM Punk and delivers Punk's own words back to him. In CM Punk's initial speech, he was the snake. However, in MJF's version, Punk is the man. Punk saw this damaged and vulnerable MJF and tried to take him in and help him, but then the snake ended up biting him. So why did MJF do that? Repeat Punk's own words back to him in this moment of power. CM Punk, in the moments previous to this, let MJF know that he sees and understands him fundamentally. Specifically the line, "All this hate, it's not gonna keep you warm, it's gonna burn you up," sticks out to me. But we'll get back to that line later. Don't worry. CM Punk sees his old, angry, and bitter self in MJF. and wants to help prevent him from becoming a monster. But in saying Punk's own words back to him, MJF is showing Punk that not only does Punk understand him, but he understands Punk. And he knows what it's like to be a snake, just like him. That he's the bad guy, just like him. MJF is reflecting Punk's own worst moment back to him to show him that he is no better. That's essentially MJF's whole MO, to show the audience that Punk is not to be trusted, that CM Punk is the bad guy through and through, and Punk wouldn't hesitate to leave his fans behind once again. But MJF isn't pretending to be any better than Punk. You know, that's the difference between them in MJF's eyes. Punk pretends to be good, and MJF doesn't. Again, this is all from MJF's perspective. I'm not stating this as fact. Now, let's get to the pipe bombs. There is a lot to talk about here. I specifically want to talk about the similarities, the common themes. Both pipe bombs are basically about how they don't get enough recognition from their company and are underappreciated. I ran out of storage on my phone, so I'm praying to God that the stuff that I deleted is enough. Anyways, for CM Punk, it was about not being on the merch and not being the main event at WrestleMania. And for MJF, it was about not being paid enough and having to work harder for a spot in the hierarchy, even though he is the second biggest viewer draw and has been with the company practically since the beginning. Both also highlight how they are the best in the world. MJF said, "I'm the best in the world," in his pipe bomb. Something to think about. Another thing about the pipe bombs is that they both highlight how the fans are hypocritical.
Those of you who are cheering me right now, you are just the biggest part of me leaving as anything else. Because you're the ones that are sipping out of those collector cups right now. You're the ones that buy those programs that my face isn't on the cover of. And then at 5 in the morning at the airport, you try to shove it in my face so you can get an autograph. It's funny I hear boos, but I also hear clapping. Where were you guys? Where were you guys this whole weekend when you were calling me an unprofessional piece of shit? Your opinions change at the drop of a dime, and then you pretend your new opinions are the same as your old. For example, man, I always knew MJF was a good wrestler. Really? That's interesting. Because last time I checked, you guys pretended I sucked in the ring for a long time.
Another fact is that both highlight their rich bosses.
But Vince McMahon's gonna make money to spite himself. He's a millionaire who should be a billionaire. You know why he's not a billionaire?
But whatever you do, don't ask him to reach into his pockets and pay the man who's been busting his ass for him since day one. No. Make sure he hoards all that money. Make sure he hoards all that money.
A few other smaller similarities include mentioning other companies.
Now, who knows? Maybe I'll go defend it in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Maybe I'll go back to Ring of Honor. Because I don't pretend to watch New Japan? Would you treat me better if I was an ex-WWE guy?
Calling their boss by their name.
Kissing Vince McMahon's ass. I have so many of Vincent K. McMahon's imaginary brass rings. Ask Stat Boy Tony in the back, see what he's got to say.
They reference leaving or quitting.
Before I leave in 3 weeks with your WWE Championship. And he's split, just like I'm split. Because I don't want to be here anymore. Tony, I want you to fire me.
Cussing.
With glad-handing, nonsensical, yes men. You
and getting their mics cut off.
Hey, can we do this whole bully camp?
Seeing how all of these things are similar in their pipe bombs, MJF saying, "I'm the best in the world," simply cannot be a coincidence. I feel like this is just another way that they are intentionally paralleling MJF and CM Punk. And one more really significant thing about the MJF pipe bomb is that after the feed got cut, CM Punk came out to talk to MJF, but MJF's exited through the crowd. Here's a clip of proof. If you don't believe me. And if this is a work, it is, but you know, if this is a work, I like the added detail of CM Punk only having one boot on. Just an added detail of like, this wasn't planned, guys. But I also think it's significant because it insinuates that CM Punk dropped everything to go out and talk to MJF because CM Punk understands. He's been in MJF's exact position. He knows what to say. You know, and CM Punk has talked about it before, about wanting to be a mentor to the younger wrestlers. This is an absolute I can fix him moment for CM Punk. He said, I can fix him, but then they ended up making each other worse. And probably out of all of the young wrestlers at AEW, CM Punk definitely sees himself most in MJF. He's reiterated this point many times, from saying, you talk too much, just like me back in the day. Or he tries to walk like me, talk like me, but he can never think like me. But I think the best example of this line is...
So here's the thing, Max. I've done horrible things in my life. I used to be you. So full of hate. But listen, man, I poured alcohol down an alcoholic's throat. I covered a legendary wrestler in the ashes of his dead beloved manager. I mocked a wrestler's addiction until he lost his job because of it. And I'm here to tell you right now that all that hate, it's not just gonna keep you warm, it's gonna burn you up.
You see, I told you we'd get back to that. Of course, I'm a man of my word. Stupid. Anyways, CM Punk knows what it's like to be young and overly talented and full of anger. It's no wonder he went soft for MJF for a second, you know? He felt bad for him because he was him. He acknowledges that too, you know? Punk says, I used to be you. And the line about it's gonna burn you up, Punk was referring to his own pipe bomb and leaving WWE. It was all that anger, it burnt him up. And for MJF, the burning up was his own pipe bomb and leaving AEW. CM Punk knew what all that anger would lead up to, and that's why he went out to talk to MJF after the pipe bomb, because he knows, he understands MJF. I'm gonna repeat this over and over again. So we're presented with this babyface CM Punk, with this sort of understanding that he has learned and grown from his past mistakes. But coming back to the present, we're forced to reevaluate that assumption. CM Punk comes back with all this aggression, really for no reason. You know, he calls out Hangman Adam Page for some reason, you know? He has brawls with Jon Moxley and insulting him and his friends. And I don't know about y'all, but that doesn't really sound like a face. And then there's all these backstage rumors that he has real heat with Hangman, and he's unhappy at AEW and wants to quit, even though for a few weeks ago he was at San Diego Comic-Con talking about how AEW has reignited his love for pro wrestling. You know, it's not adding up. Then CM Punk and Jon Moxley have their match, but not at All Out, but instead on a Dynamite 2 weeks before. And it's essentially a squash match. And Punk hurts his foot again. But when he goes down to sell the move, he grabs the wrong foot. I mean, CM Punk has been in this business too long to make a mistake like that, first of all. I mean, clearly, this is all leading up to a heel turn. Also, not to mention, CM Punk usually changes his appearance before a turn. Now he's wearing tank tops all of a sudden. And if you say that's a stretch, shut up. Shut up. Just the way I see it is CM Punk is gonna demand a rematch at All Out, win the title back, probably in a sketchy way, in turn giving him a heel turn, and then MJF is gonna come out. I was listening to Ron Funch's live wrestling podcast called One Fall, which you should totally listen to, by the way, on the Spotify Live app. It's so good. And you can, if you want to like request to talk on the podcast, you can. He usually accepts you. I've talked on it twice. It's great. You know, on the podcast we were talking about the whole CM Punk situation, and Dave LaGreca was on, and he was talking about how it would be nearly impossible for CM Punk to have a heel turn in Chicago because that crowd is going to cheer for him no matter what. But he added, you know, it seems like a challenge that CM Punk would put upon himself, you know? And I totally agree. I mean, CM Punk is one of the greatest performers in wrestling history. If anyone could get his own hometown to turn on him, it would be CM Punk. And I would be so excited to see that. Oh my gosh. Ugh. But going back to the idea that CM Punk could come out after Punk turns heel and wins the title back, let's reiterate MJF's motivation during their feud, right? MJF knows CM Punk inside and out. He knows he's a snake. He knows CM Punk would turn his back on the fans if it meant benefiting his ego. MJF was trying to tell us all along. And for CM Punk to have a heel turn because his ego was bruised, yeah, that gives MJF all the validation in the world. MJF would feel vindicated because he was right all along. And after MJF's pipe bomb, the whole audience was on his side. MJF might come back as a face to feud with a heel Punk. Their roles would be reversed. Are you kidding me? That would be awesome. I mean, let's be real. MJF is a natural heel. If he does turn face, it's not gonna be for very long. You know, if we have this heel Punk who may still feel inclined to help MJF, I think eventually MJF and CM Punk would be on the same side as heels together. Not immediately though. This is the feud of the century, and if Tony Khan is smart enough, which that's debatable, he would drag this feud out for as long as possible. But that's just me. And you know, this is just my theory, you know, I could be completely wrong, which is okay. It's okay if I'm wrong. It's totally okay. I won't freak out. No, it's good. But yeah, that's kind of all I have on here. So, I mean, like we talked about, you know, the feud itself. We talked about the snake story. We talked about the pipe bombs and how similar they are to each other. I don't know, I just feel like the dog collar match wasn't the end of MJF and CM Punk's feud. I think MJF's gonna come back and it's gonna keep on going, because you can't have a feud that good with two people who are so similar and not keep it going, you know? That's just how I feel. And I didn't cover everything. You you know, I think there's more that I could have covered. It's just I'm very tired, and you know, I'm working on a timeline, you know, I'm working on a deadline, you know, trying to get this out before All Out. Maybe I can make a follow-up to talk about, you know, what this means after All Out. You know, I can make a part 2. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I am extremely new to the idea of a video essay, and I'm flying by the seat of my pants. If you want more video essays specifically related to wrestling, I would love to. I have some other feuds that I would love to talk about, specifically Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. I would love to talk about everything going on with Daniel Garcia right now. You know, there's so much I would like to talk about. So if you want more, let me know. If you don't want more, I'm going to ignore you. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a few other videos kind of about wrestling specifically saved up to post, so I'll try to get those out too. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye. Let's take a moment to appreciate the downward spiral, which is the thing that inspired this. Anyways, I'm super normal and okay.